and we broached this topic with Damon Jones in the first hour, Rob. He said he's not into analytics. My take on analytics, and this goes for basketball and baseball especially, but also even football. But basketball and baseball, I think, is having more of an effect. I think it's a part of the game. I get it, because here's the math. If you shoot 33% from three-point range, which is not particularly good, right? Like, if you're a 33% shooter from three, you're not a very good three-point shooter. But, Rob, that's the equivalent of making 50% from two. And that's the math. That's what all these analytics and coaches and executives are saying. They're saying, look, we can throw up a bunch of threes, and if we hit 35% of them, that's like shooting 50% from the floor, which is great.
Which is great. If you shoot 45, you're good.
Right. So that's I think it's a part of the equation. I'm not saying you shouldn't shoot threes and try to get to the rim and all that, but maybe are we seeing the same thing we've seen in baseball, where in baseball, Rob, the Yankees, we know, have been big analytics, and they've been, other than this year, they've had good regular seasons.
They've gone to the ALCS a couple of years, Chris, and they didn't win and get to the World Series.
The playoffs,
right? But they've gotten there, right?
Season.
Right.
Billy Bean, you always bring him up. That worked out in the regular season, but obviously
they never won anything. Right. In Oakland, and he was there for 25 years. They didn't win anything.
And I think the teams in baseball, we saw it with the Dodgers a few years ago when they're benching their best home run hitters.
And they lost that World Series to the Red Sox, right?
Right. So when the teams in baseball, I think, that have won World Series have used a mix. Some analytics, but you also got feel, the human element, and just regular old-time baseball standards, if you will. Same thing in basketball. Chris Paul and Devin Booker are mid-range kings. Kevin Durant, a mid-range king. Let's look at the champions recently. If Phoenix wins it this year, you got the mid-range game. Last year, the Lakers were not a very good three-point shooting team at all. They were big, and they won it that way. And then before them, of course, you had Toronto, which Kawhi Leonard is a mid-range assassin. That's his game. And then before that, you had Golden State. Now, everybody looks at Golden State as the ones that changed the game, right? Steph and Clay. But, Rob, if you watch them, Durant is a mid-range killer when he was there, and Steph and Clay will shoot a lot of mid-range shots too.
And they
don't
showed
just
it.
Shoot the three.
They showed it last night. Didn't they have a graphic up, Chris, during the finals where they showed the mid-range guys? And it was
the Kings, right? Kawhi and Durant, and and Booker,
and Chris Paul. Those were the four best, I think, of the mid-range that they show, and two were on the Suns.
Right. One was on one of the what people still think is the best team in the league in Brooklyn if they're healthy. Yep. And then Kawhi is the other one.
Right.
So I just, Rob, Damon was right. Yes, we get the numbers, and that should be a factor. But
not
at the end of the day, you got to go ball, right?
100%. You can't totally rely, because you talk about it all the time. There's a human element to it, Chris. You can make all these shots and then ask somebody to make a shot or a situation with the game on the line in the fourth quarter, right? Absolutely. It's different. You can't tell me it's the same.
Analytics doesn't take nerves into consideration, pressure, who's got heart, who doesn't,
the crowd,
chemistry in the locker room.
There's a lot of other things, because you're dealing with people, not robots. So we saw, and I'll give you the perfect example, Chris. With the Clippers, Paul George is an excellent free throw shooter. Chris, what happened? He missed 2 free throws. They said all year he hadn't missed 2 together.
They have changed the series.
All year.
Yep. You're right. That's a great example.
Right?
So I hope, Rob, that this would be a lesson we saw it. Maybe the greatest example was Houston, right? Against Golden State was at 2018. They missed 27 straight three-pointers.
27 straight.
How about taking a 15-footer?
How about
Rob,
setting up a
you
play
and
for
I
something
went-
in the paint, Chris? How about timeout? Here's the play. We're going to lob it in,
Right.
and you're either going to make a basket, right, or be fouled. But we're not going to put up 3-pointers and keep missing.
You and I went to, I don't know what year it was. I think it was LeBron's first year with the Lakers. So what's that, 2019? We went to the season opener, right? Together. It was the
Right.
Rockets
Yep.
and the
Yep.
Lakers. And I remember sitting there, and obviously it had been happening for a while, but I don't know, it just struck me that day, that game. You were seeing James Harden and the rest of the Rockets. I think Chris Paul was with them, at that point. They were getting to the open 15-footers, especially Harden, getting there, and it was like wide open, and they wouldn't take it. For the most part, they were going back out to the three or kicking it out to somebody at the 3-point line. And I'm like, this is ridiculous.
Right. It didn't make any sense on why they wouldn't take the shot that they had. It was open. And then we saw we bring it up often, but the ultimate, analytics going wild with the end of that Nuggets game. You remember where everybody ran. They were had a wide open. It was like a 3 or 4-on-1 break, Chris.
Right.
And the other three guys who didn't have the ball ran to the 3-point line, and they missed the 3-point and lost the game when they could have easily gone straight to the basket.
A 2 would have tied it, I believe. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
They would have tied the game.
Right. And their instinct told them, run to the 3-point line, because that's what they're taught now. What I tell kids, when years ago, when I'd see, young kids and teenagers that want to work on their game, I would tell them, look, work on your handle, because if you have a great handle, then nobody can really pressure you. They can get up on you, but if your handle is that sweet, then you can shake them, and they'll have to back off eventually. There's nothing worse, having been a point guard, there's nothing worse than a quick defender who's all over you, hounding you all the way up the court. And so if you got a great handle, you can deal with that and shake them off. And then the second thing, I used to tell them, work on your mid-range J. Because when I covered the Cavs, we had him on the show, Terrell Brandon, Rob.
I remember him.
He was mid-range. He got him to 2 All-Star games, And so, but now I do tell him, I say, look, work on your handle. Obviously, you got to work on the 3 if you're coming up today. But don't ignore the mid-range game. Like, if you've got all 3 levels, if you got the 3-point shot, you can finish at the rim, and you've got a mid-range game, then you're really tough.
No doubt. And I just, why you would pass that up when they're giving it to you, knock it down, Chris, right? Why? It just doesn't make any sense. It's open.
Well, what they say is most guys won't knock it down with that great regularity. But, look at Joel Embiid, right? He, as much as I want him in the post more, that dude is a great mid-range shooter, especially for that size. He is a great mid-range shooter. And I've had older players tell me that when you take away the mid-range shot, think of some of the greatest, most creative players in the league, in league history. They did it in the mid-range. So if you take away the mid-range, you take away a lot of the great creativity of the game. I mean, do I even have to say? I mean, Michael Jordan was probably the best mid-range shooter in NBA history. Once he developed that shot.
Right.
Coming in,
he didn't come into the league with it. Right. But he developed it. He was, and he became unbelievable, to be honest.
I just hope, and again, we're talking baseball and basketball, Rob, but I would hope that this series, and really, like we said, these last several years, you can go to baseball as well, would teach these teams to stop ignoring the mid-range game. Again, you can shoot. You got to shoot a lot of threes nowadays. We get it. I'll give you the Bucks, Rob, as an example. The Bucks are huge. Brook Lopez, Giannis, but they don't really exploit teams for the most part down low because they shoot a ton of threes too. So Damon said it, play to your strengths. If I've got a guy like Kawhi that's a great mid-range shooter, I'm not going to tell him don't shoot the mid-range shot.
Right. No, Kawhi, don't take that. Run to the three-point line.
Right.
And put that shot up.